What's up, everybody? Cinephile Mike here, and I have the pleasure of chatting with John Kelly, the co-writer and director of the wonderful animated short Retirement Plan, which is currently shortlisted for the Academy Awards for Best Animated Short. John, how are you today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Mike.
My pleasure. So, this film, in a 7-minute film, it says so much in a short amount of time. I'm curious to know, what was your biggest challenge in compressing character and emotion into such a tight time frame?
Yeah, it's funny when we were applying for funding with Screen Ireland here in the interview, um, Pauline, who was on the panel, said it's the first time she's seen a 15-page script for a 5-minute film. So we were always going to pack a lot in. It's my slightly undiagnosed ADHD, non-linear brain, throwing as much at the audience as we can. But I think that was the challenge is finding the rhythm in the edit. Because I mean, obviously in live action you do the edit after a shoot, but in animation you do the edit up at the beginning. It's kind of front loaded. So myself and my co-writer Tara kind of worked to get a rhythm. So some bits were really compressed and really fast and like hammering at you. Then we were able to contrast that with, more thoughtful moments, letting it breathe a little bit. But with 100 shots in 7 minutes, it was challenging.
Yeah. And the humor in the film, and there's a lot of it, it often sits right next to something more reflective or bittersweet. How did you calibrate that balance so that neither the humor or the bittersweetness would undercut the other?
Yeah, I think that comes from our own kind of writing sensibilities is, you go a little bit emotionally deep and then you puncture the tension with a bit of humor, and then you go even deeper and then you puncture it with more humor. At least that was the intention. But it's definitely a balancing act, and that just came with us kind of lowering the stakes, which was a bit of a breakthrough on this project for me. Really just like really rough drawings, my voice early on, just trying to find the balance and kind of weave the tonal, thread the needle tonally. But that was tricky. I mean, obviously Donald's performance brings it all together. But certainly in the script, we wanted to try and find a way to kind of balance that. I mean, one thing that was really useful actually was my co-writer lives in New York and I live in Dublin. And so we actually wrote the screenplay on Google Sheets. And because it's a list format, this character listing all the things he wants to do,
Mhm.
the order was a little bit arbitrary, compared to a typical narrative story. So we had full flexibility of just like popping cells, grab a bunch of cells and move it down.
Right.
Um, but so that really helped us find the balance.
Well, and that's great because I mean, I'm looking forward to my retirement. I know I'm years away from it, but I definitely think I added some of my things to my list from your list. I'm
Oh,
like,
nice.
oh yeah, that would be kind of fun to do.
Brilliant. I
Um,
won't ask which. I'm curious though.
that's an off-camera conversation.
Yeah.
So you talked about Tom Holland. He's excellent in this film. Can you talk a little bit how you work together to really make this simple animated character feel so lived in and human in that vocal
Yeah.
performance?
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, it's all credit to him. Obviously there's no likeness between him and the character. But I did think he would be the perfect person to kind of to balance that comedy and drama. Whenever you see him on screen, he has this magnetism. He's very engaging in every performance, no matter how small, but he's also got this sort of vulnerability to him. And I thought that could work really well. Um, so yeah, luckily he was interested. and had a kind of a gap that he was able to join us for a voice record. But, it really was just a couple of hours with him, with a chat before and kind of some chats after. And we did kind of 5 or 6 takes all the way through. We kind of read the entire script all the way through because, usually if you're recording a performance or acting at a performance, you might record it non-linearly or non-chronologically in chunks and bursts and stuff like that. But I think with this, Donal and myself and Tara, our co-writer, kind of knew that you really, to get that arc working, you'd have to read the script from start to finish. So each take was, 7 to 10 minutes, and he would sort of get himself worked up or emotionally worked up over the course of that, reflecting the character's journey. Um, and yeah, it's just very collaborative. He's a really funny, clever, approachable guy. So um, it just became very easy to try and um, work together on building the character.
Nice. And so when you talk about that, recording it linearly and making these decisions, and when you were working with your co-writer and moving things all over the Google Sheets, and I'm an educator, so there's nothing that I love more than a Google Sheet.
Yeah, it's great.
I know the whole Google Drive. As you were crafting the story and all the animation you have, like you said, it's 100 shots. It's all very purposeful. So I'm wondering, as you were going, did you guys have to decide to trim things out or put things in, or was there anything kind of fun that you felt that you took out that you were, the kill your darlings kind of moment?
Yeah, there's one. I mean, I tend to get animation can be quite a isolated experience, compared to, if you're on a film set with tons of other people. So, I kind of drew and I didn't animate it, but I designed all the scenes and edited it and co-wrote it. So my head was very like in the trenches on it. And it can be hard to have that perspective. Um, for me, kind of directing is a balance of knowing exactly what you want, but then also being completely open-minded. Um, and so sometimes you have to be stubborn when people question things. Like initially it was set in the US and a few people asked me, why is it set in the US? And I didn't really have an answer for it. So I was like, okay, no, I need to set it in Dublin. And yeah, like the only big thing that changed, and that was at the very end, was that we had an extra shot at the very end of the film. So currently the film ends on a kind of a quite a thoughtful moment, as the character considers, the possibility of an afterlife.
Mhm.
And I had uh, dropped a really sort of gaggy gag after that, where the character is reincarnated as a little Jack Russell Terrier and growling at the camera, and it says, "I will come back as a dog, and I will bite Deirdre Hogan," who's a character referenced earlier on in the film, if you haven't seen it. And so I really loved it. I thought it was hilarious. But one by one, sort of people just said, "Are you sure about that?" And Donald was the last person, and he wrote a very eloquent email, kind of for various reasons, kind of tactfully saying, "I'm not sure if you 100% need that, but absolutely up to you. Don't want to tell you what to do." Really polite,
Yeah.
but he was totally right. We took that away, and that was the best thing we did because it finishes the film on a much more open-ended, much more thoughtful note.
And in this film, while it is about the one character that Amnal plays, there's a second character in this piece, which is the music. Can you
Oh
talk
yeah.
about how you came to choose that musical piece to complement this? Because it's beautiful, and I'm downloading it onto my Amazon Music Spotify playlist. How did you choose that piece? Find it.
Yeah, it's an existing piece, as you say. It's like recorded by John Carroll Kirby called a house where walking through a house where a family have lived. And um, I had gone into the edit process fully prepared to commission a piece of music, and we had a budget for it as part of our film funding. Um, and I added this as a temp track because I, loved it, and it just captured some of the qualities that I was hoping for. The kind of it's melancholic, but it's not too melancholic. It's sort of slightly open-ended, and then the rhythm of it has this sort of slightly metronomic kind of march towards something. Um, and but I never for a moment thought that we would be able to license it because John Carroll Kirby's a really established, very talented musician who's also, co-written and produced Frank Ocean's work and Steve Lacy, and he's kind of a big figure in hip hop, which is sort of out of my sphere of influence. And but at a certain point, I was like struggling to imagine, um, you know, putting anything else there. It was perfect. I mean, we hadn't completely structured the edit around it. It was still a bit loose, but it was just this perfect sort of, high watermark. I think I've described it before as a high watermark emotionally for everything else we wanted to try and achieve. I remember I went to see 2001 Space Odyssey a few years ago, performed with an orchestra in London, the National Philharmonic Orchestra,
Mhm.
and his widow, Christiane Kubrick, came out beforehand
Oh.
in this incredible, slightly Space Odyssey dress, and she talked about his love of temp tracks, which obviously we are all familiar with, but how they had a full soundtrack prepared for that film, and then he just threw it out the window for this, what we now call needle drops. And yeah, I think I just had not to compare myself to Kubrick. I had the same experience where I just kind of felt like, no, this we can't do better than this. So I contacted him. He was on tour, but he got back to me, and he was just really approachable and chilled. And he has done soundtrack work for films that have screened at Sundance and some other things. So, he's open to that world, and he let us very generously, let us license it for the film. And has been very supportive since then.
Nice. We're going to start to wrap it up in a second. So, one question I have. So, congratulations. So, this is your first film. That's always a great accomplishment.
Oh, I have a
So,
few, but this is the first in about, yeah, I've made about two films in 20 years. So, yeah.
okay. So, we're getting ready to move into number three.
Yeah.
What would you say, and it can be from this or the first, um, would you say has been a best practice or a key practice of yours that you want to take into your next project? And what would you say, if you were to give a piece of advice, is your biggest learning curve or thing to try to avoid in doing
Right.
this work?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Um, I mean, the best practice was they're kind of connected, I think. Something I read a lot of, filmmaking books and podcasts and audiobooks and things like that. And there, the one thing that always comes up is people talking about their instinct. And, actors talk about their instinct, directors talk and writers talk about their instinct. And I think I never really fully understood that until this project, or at least what it meant to me. And I think the way we achieved it and the way I would, if I was to offer advice to anyone, which I typically wouldn't, I would say, um, what I mentioned about lowering the stakes, I think was really beneficial to me. It's so easy to imagine, when I was setting it in US, I was setting it in US because I thought, oh, I'll get this film into Sundance more easily, or or more people will watch it. Um, and that wasn't the right motivation, to look outward. Instead, I just sort of thought, well, what would I want to watch? And what would make me laugh and what would make me feel something, and just use that at every juncture along the way. I mean, obviously it helps if you're making something personal, but it doesn't have to be something miserable. Something personal can be something funny. Um, and so I think that was really useful to lower the stakes, to just not worry about what kind of storyboards I had, to get them on their feet as quickly as possible with my rough voice and some rough music that ended up not being rough music. And finding it's so much easier to find, flow, as they call it, if you operate on that level, and it's much easier to kind of listen to yourself and start trusting that if you like something, other people will.
Nice. And the last question I have is, after people live in your world, what would you like them to take away from retirement plan?
God, it's funny, like I'd never really understood what letterbox was until this film came out, and now I'm sort of mildly obsessed with it. And the revelation has been people coming away with stuff that I could never in a million years have imagined from it. You
Ah,
know, people see their parents, or they see their um, themselves, or they see, I don't know, a million different aspects to it, which is so lovely. Um, I don't know. I think I'd like people to find their sport, um, and because I'm still looking for mine. I don't think there's any answers in the film. It's just a lot of questions. It's that whole, as Ernst Lubitsch says, you give the audience two and two and let them make four. And that was sort of the intention here. There's not really much closure. But yeah, I'm excited to continue seeing what people take away from it.
beautiful. Well, John, thank you so much. It's such a beautiful little film. Best of luck to you on the journey. For those that are watching this, keep an eye out for retirement plan. It's on the short list and we'll see how it moves. But I have to say, beautiful work. And I guess I could say a lot of it is hashtag life goals.
Thanks, Mike. Lovely talking to you.